What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, I want to give a big shout out to the brother Brendan Olson for once again showing love to Too Raw for TV with the $10 donation via the Cash App. All right, much respect to him for showing love to Too Raw for TV. All right, so this is a question that I got from one of my subscribers, and it is, what if instead of Shaquille O'Neal joining the Los Angeles Lakers in 1996, he had instead joined the Utah Jazz as a free agent in 1996. Now, I think this is unlikely because I remember one of Shaq's issues was uh, one of the problems that he felt was that he wanted to be the man. And he felt like there was conflict between him and Penny Hardaway. There was a little bit of conflict there because, Penny was emerging as a star. He seemed a little bit leery of Penny being seen as the man, you know what I'm saying? Especially that year in 96 when Shaq missed, I think it was 28 games due to injury. That was the first year that Shaq, 95, 96, that Shaq had issues with injury, which, while I can't say that Shaq had an injury-plagued career, he did become besieged by the injury bug to a certain extent for the rest of his career. Um, to a certain extent. Uh, but Penny Hardaway was able to display his skills. Remember, early on in that year, before Shaq came back, there was like a stretch where Penny was like second in the NBA in scoring behind Jordan. I remember that distinctly. And Penny was I don't even want to go down that road. Penny was a dude. And there was a little bit of conflict because Shaq felt like that was his team. Plus, there was also this thing where Shaq indicated in interviews that sometimes he felt like a big fish in a small pond in Orlando. So if he goes to Utah, you're already dealing with an established duo with Stockton and Malone. Then if Orlando's a small pond, then Utah is a fishbowl, and a small one at that. So, plus Shaq had interests as far as business interests. Shaq is a businessman. Shaq had interests as far as entertainment industry, Hollywood, movies, rap, music, all that. So LA was a very tempting location for outsized personality like Shaq. So Utah, but let's just go with it in this scenario. Let's just go with the fact that Shaq wanted to win. Okay, now remember, Shaq is just coming off of an Eastern Conference sweep at the hands of the Chicago Bulls, with Michael Jordan seeking revenge and getting it for the year before where they lost in the semis to Orlando. Utah, if you may recall, had just been eliminated themselves in the Western Conference Finals by the Sonics. They missed the finals by that much. And they have been one of the better teams for 8 years, ever since they had a surprising 7-game run versus the Showtime Lakers in the 1988 Western Conference semifinals. They've always been one of the better teams, but Utah just had this bad luck where they kept losing in the playoffs. But they did, to be fair, they kept having to play against some of the better teams in the West. So if Shaq is looking to win, then Utah is a very, very tempting location. Now remember, in real life, Utah went to the finals in 97 and 98. They won 64 games in 97, 62 games in 98, had home court advantage throughout the playoffs both years. Although Chicago had the same record as them in 98, but Utah swept them in the series, the season series, so they had home court. With Shaq, I would think they're flirting with 70 wins each year. I think they get it in 96. As a matter of fact, I think they probably set a record in 96. I think they went about 74, 75 games in 96, 97. 97, 98, they probably went about 71, 70 games. Uh, I really do. They were that damn good. I know on paper people say, well, how this team was so good? You got to look at them, watch them play. You know what I'm saying? I think in this scenario, at first, Karl Malone still is a prominent scorer. That's still his team. I think his scoring average goes down a little bit. I think his scoring average goes down. I think that his assists go way up. I think instead of averaging around 27 and 11 and 3.5, whatever, I think he averages more around 25, 11 or 12, and close to 5 assists playing with Shaq. I think Shaq averages 25, 13, 3.5, 2.5 blocks. I think his efficiency goes through the roof. Playing with Stockton, I think he leads the NBA in field goal percentage. I think Shaq shoots around 63% or so. Stockton, Malone, Hornacek, their efficiency goes through the roof. Hornacek's one of the best shooters of his generation. I think he shoots over 50% from the floor, 43, 44% from downtown. I think Stockton averages probably around 13 points a game, 13 assists. The reason why I don't say 14 or 15 is because the pace of the game was starting to slow, and they were an older team, although Shaq was younger. But I think Stockton shoots up well over 50% from the floor, about 40% from three himself. Remember, Utah was already one of the most efficient teams in the NBA anyway. Like in real life, they were always leading the NBA in field goal percentage, 49, 50%. With Shaq, they're going to be around 51 plus percent, maybe close to 52. I mean, they're going to be a very difficult team to beat because they're going to get a lot of baskets around the rim. They're going to be an absolute beast in the pick and roll. They're going to get so many easy baskets, man. So many easy baskets. Remember, Utah did not shoot a lot of threes. Remember, they were always at the bottom when it came to three-point attempts. And when they did take them, they were usually wide open. So they're going to not take a lot of threes. They're going to have a lot of points in the paint. So Karl Malone's going to shoot well over 50% from the floor. Shaq's going to shoot over 60% from the floor. Stockton and Hornacek are going to be over 50%. Byron Russell, I mean, his offensive input is going to be negligible, but everybody's going to benefit. Because essentially Shaq is going to be an upgrade from Ostertag. I mean, upgrade ain't really the word I'm looking for, but the right word. But that's how it's supernova upgrade, maybe I should say, right? Honestly, I think with media narrative, I'm kind of curious as to whether Shaq or Karl Malone wins MVP in 97. It depends on how it's looked upon. I'm thinking they'll give it to Karl Malone since at that time he had never won it before. I think Karl Malone wins MVP in 97. Shaq wins it. Excuse me. Yeah. Karl Malone wins MVP in 97. Then Shaq might win it in 98. Karl Malone takes a little bit more of a backseat. Let Shaq be more of a focal point. Shaq might average 27, 28. I don't see how they really realistically. I don't think it's out of the realm possibility to say that they're three-peat. And Michael Jordan's legacy isn't the same anymore. I think he goes to the finals 2 years in a row, at least, but doesn't win it. But this is a possibility. If the Bulls don't win titles, then that possibly could either lead to a couple of things. Either the team blows up quicker and the rebuild begins earlier, or probably the more likely scenario, if Jordan and the Bulls keep going to the finals but lose, then that could be an excuse for Mike to keep playing, because Mike wants to win that elusive title. He wants to create that. He wants to win that title because he was always chasing Magic. So if 99 happens, I don't know how that works. Does that finally lead Mike to say, you know what? Maybe I need to go after Chris Webber or Mourning? You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know, because it would be a cheat code to have Shaq in Utah with Stockton and Malone. That'd be a cheat code. So maybe the super team era begins faster. Maybe it begins earlier. And then a lot of us Michael Jordan fans have to really change our tune on that, huh? Wouldn't we? Well, see, it's different with Mike. See, I mean, it was Shaq, so they're going to be like, LeBron fans be like, nah, man, keep the same energy, bruh. Keep the same energy, bruh. Well, of course, I'm doing like a little brief summary of this, but there's so many other things that's going to change. Also, the Lakers, okay? Do they trade Vlade Divac? Because you have to say in hindsight, they traded Divac because Jerry West wanted to make a play at Shaq. But now, do they trade Divac? Now I say no. Remember, Divac was very, very popular, and when they traded him, as hard as this is believed to younger fans, that trade was not very popular. People love Divac. You traded for this dude, Kobe? So do they make that trade? I don't know. Now, maybe Kobe stays in Charlotte. Maybe the trajectory of Kobe's career changes, perhaps. Maybe he's a really, really great, phenomenal player, but he plays for a bad team for many years. So he puts up better numbers, but maybe he doesn't win titles, or maybe he doesn't win as many. And then again, if he does get traded to LA, well, does that mean that his development begins earlier? And does that mean that he becomes more of a Michael Jordan-esque player in the fact that he doesn't hold back and his career numbers are even more impressive? Maybe he becomes the first guard ever to score 35,000 career points. Maybe he wins more than 2 scoring titles now. Maybe he wins 4 or 5. I don't know. I would tend to think less titles, but even more of a phenomenal player who truly does. If Jordan in this scenario only wins 3 titles and Kobe's career ends differently, then maybe he does contend with Mike for greatest shooting guard of all time by consensus. These are some different scenarios we have to look at. Also, if Shaq's in the West, then he has many more battles with the likes of David Robinson and Hakeem Olajuwon. Especially David Robinson. Although, to be fair, by the time he goes to the West, Robinson's on the downside of his career after the injury in 96. And Olajuwon's already on a natural decline. So, Shaq isn't contending against, some of the better centers, because by 96, Mutombo's already in the East in Atlanta. Mourning's in the East with Miami. Ewing is still in the East, although slowly declining. So, Rick Smits is in the East. So really, I mean, who's in the West? Like the guys I just mentioned, Arvydas Sabonis is in Portland now, but he's older. Or maybe he has to go up against his nemesis, the guy that he struggled against, Big country Reeves more. Well, then again, but then again, I got to think about it. He was already in the West with the Lakers anyway, so scratch that. Just thought about that. He's already in the West, but that's one of the criticisms we had of Shaq anyway, so that stays the same. Yeah, I think that him going to Utah in brief summation, I think the chances of them winning and being a dynasty vastly increase. It threatens the supremacy of the Chicago Bulls. And, that takes away the Lakers dynasty. Without Shaq, I don't see Kobe winning 3 titles in a row. That's not happening. So the Lakers maybe 3 titles down, And like I said, there may be a chance that Kobe doesn't even go to Lakers. And Orlando still loses out in this scenario. Remember, that wasn't a trade; that was a free agent signing in '96. So Orlando still loses out, and maybe, just maybe, we're spared of some of those god-awful movies that Shaq made in that time period, like Shazam. And that's about it, man. That's about it. That's about it, man. That's all I can pretty much think of right now at this time. I also tend to think that there's a risk of Shaq feeling some sort of boredom there in Utah. I don't know whether Shaq would be very happy living there, but on the flip side, playing alongside a guy like Karl Malone, who Shaq didn't initially like, I can't help but think him playing with Karl Malone would help him as far as his work ethic and staying in shape. You know what I'm saying? He'll finally be with somebody that knows what it's like to be the man and not having won. Because remember, Shaq had a different stigma at that time. Shaq had a stigma of not being able to win, which I thought was premature. But at that point, Shaq was seen as a bit of a choke artist. Because remember, he was putting up all these big numbers in the regular season, but I'm not going to say he was choking in the playoffs, but they were losing a lot. In 94, they lost to the Pacers. In 95, they got swept in the finals by the Rockets in a series that most people thought they had the advantage in winning. Remember, they had home court advantage. And before, remember, they had only lost 2 games all year at the O Arena. They were 39-2. They lost 2 games in the finals back-to-back at the O Arena. Games 1 and games 2. Then in 96, they got swept by the Bulls. So there's already this thing with Shaq where, oh man, this guy can't win. Karl Malone, he had been in the NBA at that point by over a decade and hadn't won anything. Hadn't even been to the finals. He was already 31. No, he was already 33 years old. So time was running out for him too. So that is a bond that those two guys could have had to prove everybody wrong and that they could win. And that could be a bond along with Stockton, because Stockton hadn't won anything either. So that could be what drove them to be an all-time great team. And I do think with Shaq on that team, that would have been too much for the Bulls. It just been too much. But anyway, that's all I got to say about it. Tell me what you guys think.